Welcome to the Fantasy's Finest Fantasy Football Podcast. Here are your hosts, William Spencer, Jalen McQueen, and Mark Carter.
What's going on? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Fantasy's Finest Podcast. Yo, let me apologize. Last week's episode was supposed to be out on schedule. I know I botched it. Had a little schedule conflict with, the family had some other things to do, so I couldn't get the time to get on and record. But I'm making it up to you. So we're going to get this baby done, and we're going to do it right. It sucks because the last episode we did, I had dropped the schedule for the podcast, right? Had everything pristine, everything lined up, ready to go, and then all of a sudden, life happens. So, but it's always fun to get back in the camera and get down and record. So in this episode, we got for you, we're going to do the 2026 biggest losers of free agency. We did the winners in our last episode. It was great. Shaking the rust off a bit, but now we're going to get into the biggest losers. I got a few names for you to talk about who have taken some hits because of the free agency moves that have happened, or maybe some moves that didn't happen that should have happened that would have changed their fantasy outlook for the new season. But we're going to get into all of that in the episode today. Boy, it's been crazy. Now you would think between the not the end of free agency, because free agency can still happen. Players can still get picked up off of the free agency pile. They can be added to different teams and so on, because we've already seen some moves occur. Players are being picked up, and after the first one or two waves of free agency, things have gotten a little bit quiet. But I have to talk about the Dianni Russini, Mike Vrabel scandal, if you want to call it that. I don't think that it's a scandal, but I'm not going to get into, I'm going to give you my 2 cents. I'm not going to get into the entire thing because it's a lot, and then it's not. Like, going back from when Dianni Russini was talking about the AJ Brown thing and, the connection to the New England Patriots, Mike Vrabel, the possible trade implications, which is still going strong, by the way. Many believe that after June 1st, AJ Brown could possibly be traded to the New England Patriots. They have still been the team that has been connected to AJ Brown, unless there's another team that's going to come out of the woodwork and, meet the Eagles' asking price and things of that nature. So the whole thing about Dianni Russini, and there's a lot of different ways to talk about this. The media, sports media, has not really been covering the entire, the entire thing, as it were. You haven't really seen it talked about on ESPN or NFL Network, and I kind of understand why, because I feel like, as other insiders and people who may know Dianni Russini personally, they also do the insider thing. They're also journalists. You're not going to really want to talk about your own people, right? You're not going to really get into that. I know people don't like that, but it's like, I don't want to call it a fraternity, but it's like, if you're in a club and everybody, they work together and all of that stuff, they're not really prone to talking about other people's things. You know what I mean? It sounds bad, and I kind of get why a lot of major outlets aren't really talking about it. Like, it is crazy. Like, the pictures that came out, they're not good looks. They're not good. It's a bad look. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't have something like that come out, because even though the pictures themselves don't look horrible, like, they're not really doing anything in the pictures. They're holding hands at best. You don't really know the context in the pictures. He's giving her a hug in one of them. I think he's holding her hands. Mike Vrabel is holding Dianni Russini's hands in another picture. They're sitting by the pool. It's like, all right, those aren't bad pictures in themselves. It's not like it's not like provocative. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they were worse pictures, that came out, yeah, I could see that. Yo, this is ridiculous. And they're both married, so you got that angle that people are trying to play on. But it's like the pictures themselves, they're not like, oh my God, they must be sleeping with each other. It's not that. But when you have things like that come out, you allow people to make their own narratives on said pictures. Do they look good? Like, is it incriminating? To me, no. This is like kind of regular stuff. Like if you was walking in the supermarket and you hugged a girl that you haven't seen in a while, should you be in trouble for that? No. Like if your wife trips out because you hugged another girl, I mean, and it's not like, you picked her up and all that. You didn't do any extra stuff, but in the picture you gave her a hug. I mean, come on. Okay. But the optics of who she is and who Mike Vrabel is, and then you encompass everything that has gone on with her reports of AJ Brown and the connection in their relationship, whether it's professional or otherwise, we don't know on that part, but the professional relationship that they do have, and then those pictures come out, it makes things a little muddy. You know what I'm saying? So in that aspect, it does look bad, but the pictures themselves are not like, yeah, we got her. We know that they're sleeping with each other. You don't know that because based on the pictures, there's nothing that really gives that kind of connotation. The other part is that Eagles fans have been going, or they've been doing their victory lap on social media. Yeah, because before I jump into that, Dianni Russini has resigned from the Athletic. She stated that her contract is going to be up in June the 30th, which is what, maybe not 6 weeks. Yeah, like 6-7 weeks later. I'm not counting April. Like we're almost done with April, but it's not that far away. So she decided to put in her resignation with the Athletic. The Athletic is still going to go on with their investigation. They said that they're not going to stop their investigation. They're going to keep going forward. And if they find anything, they'll let, the world know if her journalistic integrity, it was compromised with her relationship with Mike Vrabel. And it's just, the Eagles fans in particular are doing their victory lap because Dianni Russini was dropping all the information about AJ Brown, him, wanting to be traded away from the Philadelphia Eagles, the New England Patriots probably being a destination where AJ Brown wanted to be at, and so on. So because Dianni Russini is dropping all of this news or these insiders, she's not listing her sources, which I still don't understand why people don't get that. The whole point of having insiders or having people give you information about a team that they're connected to or that they talk about, nobody's going to do that. Nobody is going to give up their source. Because I've seen Eagles fans on social media, oh, it's all anonymous sources. She don't really know what's going on. Nobody's really talking to her. She's been in this industry for years. So to sit there and ignorantly say, oh, she doesn't know anybody in NovaCare, she doesn't know anybody in Philly, we don't know that. There's no way me and you, the average person, would know who Dianni Russini is connected to. Right? We got to be honest about that. Take our fandom and put it to the side. We don't know. All right. So that's one thing. They're doing their victory lap because of everything that she's brought out about AJ Brown, because, they don't want AJ Brown to be traded. Some Eagles fans don't want AJ Brown to be traded. And I understand that. But there's other things that have been discussed, even without Dianni Russini being involved, that AJ Brown wants to be traded. The signs are pointing there. We talked about the cap situation, why he hasn't been traded before June 1st. Other reports that Dianni Russini were involved in, I've heard them talk about on Philadelphia radio, the agent being given permission, possibly given permission to go talk to people at the combine to see, what it would cost, if anybody would be interested in trading for AJ Brown, etc. And there's only so many people that can actually give that green light. Howie Roseman's comments, not necessarily diming out or saying that they're not going to trade AJ Brown, which is kind of weird because if you're not going to trade a player, you would vehemently deny or shoot down trade rumors that you're not going to trade this player. And Howie Roseman has not done that at all. So you can't get mad at Dianni Russini for doing her job if the general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles is not coming out and just killing the trade rumors. Like, I think Eagles fans gloss over that. Howie Roseman has not said that he doesn't want, or he hasn't definitively said, we're not trading AJ Brown. Because if you're going to listen to teams about trading AJ Brown, you have news about a possible asking price for AJ Brown that just doesn't come out of nowhere. The New England Patriots don't make that up if they're trying to trade for AJ Brown, right? That means they had to go to Howie Roseman and say, look, what do you want for AJ Brown, right? You say that you're not trading him unless you get a good offer. What would be a good offer that you would want for AJ Brown? And the reports of a first round pick, possibly more for AJ Brown, they surfaced. So somebody's got to be having those conversations. And the other thing is that, back to the point about Dianni Russini not having any sources, if her connection with Mike Vrabel is being blown out of proportions because they're trying to make it into a, how do I say this the right way? I don't want to, it's more than what it seems. I guess I could say that. Which you don't know because it's all speculation. Nothing has been proven yet. If anything, you would want to wait until The Athletic has done their investigation so that you have something concrete instead of just going off on your speculations. Because both of them have denied any kind of extracurricular activities that have gone on with these allegations. So if you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes, why are you running around making all these outlandish allegations towards what possibly could happen? Because if they're not really sleeping with each other, and she does have sources, with Mike Vrabel being one of them, because they have a relationship. It's no different than any other insider being cool with somebody that they either cover or they are popular and people are willing to give them information as long as they're anonymous. So if Adam Schefter, no one questions Adam Schefter about what he's doing or how he gets all this information or the people that he talked to or his sources or anything like that, right? I've never seen fans say Adam Schefter doesn't know what he's talking about. He's an insider. People like talking to him. We're not accusing Adam Schefter of sleeping with any execs or anything like that. So when Dianni Russini, I don't feel like that's a cool thing to do. I get that as Eagles fans, they want to protect their players. They don't like their players being talked about as wanting to leave, etc. I get that. But straight up trying to crush somebody's career is crazy over speculative things at most. Like if the picture was Mike Vrabel and Dianni Russini kissing, right? They're kissing. Oh, yes, that is a horrible picture, right? They're both married. You got them up in Arizona somewhere at a resort. They up here smooched up. Yeah, that's bad. That's horrible. That's the smoking gun that I feel Eagles fans would need, right? If the investigation comes out and it says, yes, Dianni Russini was sleeping with Mike Vrabel, they're both married, they sent out the private investigator. Like, that is definitive. You know what I'm saying? But you don't have that. You don't have that at all. So to just try and crush her because I don't want to say that either. I want to say it carefully, but it's like, dog, y'all dogpiling on her. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. Now, if things were concrete and you got your smoking gun, by all means, you got her. You know what I'm saying? You got her. That's it. But you don't have that. You have speculation. Nothing concrete has come out yet. Now they're trying to say, oh yeah, she must be guilty because she resigned. No, because even if you read her resignation letter, she says that she's not resigning because of the allegations being true. She's resigning because she's not going to feed into it anymore. They already issued statements. Vrabel and Russini utterly denied it. If the investigation comes back and the Athletic says that, well, we did our due diligence, we don't got nothing. Don't you know what's going to happen, right? The Eagles fans are going to turn around and say the Athletic is covering it up. That's the next thing. Either the Athletic finds something or the Athletic doesn't. And those are the two spectrums that you're going to have. Oh, they just covering for her. They don't want to tell us the truth. We know she was sleeping with him. How you know that? You weren't there. You don't know. And it's a circus, right? It's crazy. Eagles fans if they got a bone to pick with you, you are dead to them. You are no longer allowed in Philadelphia. You are wrong, even if you are proven right. If A.J. Brown gets traded after June 1st and he goes to the New England Patriots, are Eagles fans going to come back and say to Dianni Russini, my bad, man, we shouldn't have treated you like that because you knew what you was talking about? No, you're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. They're not. And we know it. But, I don't think that it was cool to dogpile on her unless you got, like I said, you got that smoking gun. It was just like, look, she was definitely doing some dirt. She getting her sources through unconventional means. You know what I mean? Like, she going about it the wrong way. She's making women in sports look bad, et cetera, et cetera. If she's doing all of these things, yeah, it's a bad look. But nothing's been proven yet. So at least just wait for that. So I just wanted to open with that. We talked to a couple of friends in my group chats. They was like, yo, you going to talk about this? And I was like, I guess I have to. Even though it's a fantasy show, it's still NFL news, right? So got to talk about it. So that's what I'm gonna open with. It's just crazy right now. The draft is a couple days away. Well, a few days away. It's like 8 or 9 days. So we're gonna be getting into draft content a little bit. So but that whole thing, Dianni Russini and Mike Vrabel, man, it's a mess right now. But that's it. I mean, that's what we're going to open with. Now we're going to get into the show. So make sure that you're subscribed to the Fantasy's Finest podcast. We got our YouTube channel that's been doing pretty well. So go over there and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of the Fantasy's Finest podcast over there. You can also find us on social media like on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, at FF's Finest. So go over there, whatever your flavor is. Go hit the subscribe button. The follow button over there and lock in with us. We're going to get you guys right for the fantasy season, and we're going to start with some off-season content. So, of course, like I said, we're going to be talking about the biggest losers or my biggest losers for free agency for fantasy football. So, of course, we got to get into some news, some stuff that's going on other than the Dianni Russini and Mike Vrabel stuff. So, we're going to get into something a little more, relaxed. Well, the first one is not going to be. I already looked at my show sheet. We're going to start off with some heat. So, let's get into that. News and notes from around the NFL.
News and notes from around the NFL.
All right, so our first nugget of the day. The NFL has cleared Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice of abuse allegations. Now, according to the report, the league has closed its investigation into the Kansas City Chiefs receiver, concluding that he has not engaged in conduct that violates the personal conduct policy of the NFL following abuse allegations brought forward by his ex-girlfriend, Dakota Jones. So that means, plain and simple, that Rashee Rice is in the clear. He hasn't been charged criminally for anything that's been going on with this. So it looks like he's in the clear for the 2026 NFL season. He's going to be ready to go for week 1. He's probably going to be ready to go for training camp and OTAs and all of that stuff because he's also in a contract year. He wants to get paid. He already said something crazy like, he wants to get that JSN money. I don't know about that, dog. I don't think you're going to be hitting those kind of numbers, but we'll see what Rashee Rice gets. If the Kansas City Chiefs entertain a contract and end up paying him, they let Tyreek Hill go. Do they let Rashee Rice go too? We don't know. So we'll see how that develops as we go on through the offseason. I'm not sure he gets paid this season, though. All right. Cowboys. Of course, I had to throw in some Cowboy stuff. Cowboys, Stephen Jones says that the Cowboys have not received a call with interest in trading for George Pickens. George Pickens they use the franchise tag on George Pickens, and the tag includes if anybody's interested in trading him or trading for him, they have to give up 2 first-round picks. So the Cowboys knew what they were doing when they hit George Pickens with this kind of franchise tag, right? Was it a good move? Yes. Logistically, it was a good move. Is it a good move for business? In my opinion, no. You want to get... this is my opinion. You have to get George Pickens paid and under contract. He balled out for you. You traded a 3rd-round pick for him, and you needed a number 2 wide receiver. Now, he's not a number 2. He's more like, in any given week, CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens can be 1A, 1B. That's how good they are together. That's what you wanted. You got what you wanted. He earned the pay. He's an all-pro. Give him the money. 30, 31, 32, 33 million dollars, whatever it's got to be. I say 32 million. Lock him up. But you got to pay him. And the frustrating thing is that Cowboys beat writers, they make a lot of sense because they're in tune to everything. KD Drummond dropped an article not too long ago, maybe a couple days ago, about the franchise tag situation with George Pickens, how everything averages out, how the Cowboys could franchise tag him to maybe up to 3 times. It's not something that's normally done, but the Cowboys could do it. And all of those tags combined would average out to some manageable number. But just get the deal done. Because if you don't, and you decide, you know what, he balled again, that number, if he balls in 2026, that number is going to go up. Do you want that number to go up, or can you get him at a manageable number now? 28 million is not going to do it. 28 million is your baseline, right? Because the franchise tag is about that. So if you can get him at 31, 32, that's not bad. That's a couple more million than the franchise tag. Get the deal done and do your work. Have him ready for training camp so that we can get into the season and everybody is paid and focused and ready to go. We don't need another situation where they're getting signed a week before week 1, or like Dak, he got signed at kickoff. Like, come on, we don't need another situation like that. I'm sorry, I rambled on too much, but the Cowboys, it's like a double-edged sword. It is a smart move logistically, but at the same time, just get the deal done. But speaking of deals, the Texans exercised the 5th-year option for quarterback C.J. Stroud. He's going to make $25.9 million in 2027. And he is eligible for a contract extension. They're already talking about that now. I'm not sure how much C.J. Stroud gets, but that'll be interesting to see, especially after that performance in the playoffs. And everybody likes talking about how you perform in the postseason. And it's not just the regular season. And C.J. Stroud, he was supposed to be better than Dak. All right. I'm gonna stop. I'm not going to go into another. That's another conversation for another story. All right. Browns head coach Todd Monken said that he's fired up about the team's quarterbacks. Remember, the Cleveland Browns have 3 quarterbacks heading into the 2026 season: Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson, and Dylan Gabriel. Everyone is expecting Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders to duke it out for the QB1 spot. Monken says that he was impressed with the quarterbacks picking up the new offensive playbook, which is great, but it's all going to come down to who's going to take that top spot. If I was a betting man, Shedeur is the long-term long-term answer for the Browns. Deshaun Watson is going to try and recoup his value after struggling since he got traded to the Cleveland Browns. He suffers from injuries. He hasn't played full seasons, and they tied him to a big, fully guaranteed contract. So they're going to try to get their money's worth out of Deshaun Watson before it's all said and done. The Athletic's Zach Jackson reports that Deshaun Watson's Achilles he's been medically cleared to go for OTAs and training camp. So that's a good sign for Deshaun Watson at the very least. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reports that Kyle Pitts has signed his franchise tag and he's reporting to OTAs. He's going to make $15 million on the tag. Hopefully the Atlanta Falcons get a long-term deal done with him. Giants coach John Harbaugh said that Malik Nabers won't be ready, or he won't be on the field until training camp or closer to the season, which is kind of what was already expected. In other reports, Malik Nabers tore his ACL last season, really bad injury. No current setbacks have been reported on Malik Nabers' injury so far, so that's a good sign. But it's also possible for Nabers to end up on the PUP list to begin the season too. So that's just something to monitor as you get closer to your fantasy drafts. Stay on top of the Malik Nabers news with us, and hopefully we get some more details as we get closer into deeper into August. Preseason starts, then we get to know what's going on with Malik Nabers, and hopefully, and I always say this, hopefully your draft is not early. So that way you know what's going on with Malik Nabers, if that's one of your players that you're targeting, and you can get the best for your fantasy league or for your from your fantasy draft, and not have to risk it. Devon Achane and the Dolphins are far apart in their contract negotiations, and he did not report to voluntary OTAs. Achane is looking for a new contract. It's been speculated that he could get a 4-year, $48 million or $50 million contract, something along that line. Why are the Dolphins playing with this one? I'm not understanding why, because you traded away everybody else. You could have traded Devon Achane. You didn't. You said that he was a cornerstone piece. You said that about Jaden Waller. What are we doing, Dolphins? My dynasty team needs to know. So hopefully we'll get some news about Achane getting a new deal and, everything goes honky-dory with the Dolphins and Achane. But that'll do it for the news. Now let's get into the biggest free agency losers for fantasy football.
If I invited you to lunch, I think you're a winner. If I didn't, I don't. But I just met you all. Life is long, opinions change. Winners, prove me right. Losers, prove me wrong.
Okay, so I'm not going to lie to you. I talked about this guy all offseason because I swore up and down that he was going to get released by his team. He was going to go off to greener pastures and be a force in 2026. I traded for him in my dynasty league, which I'm still proud of. Gave up a first-round pick for him. And I'm like, yeah, I already invested in this guy. I got a good running back stable because I got Jahmyr Gibbs. I got Devon Achane. I got James Cook in my running back stable. And now I added this guy. I got Basul Tootin too. Bashul. Is it Bashul or Basul? Y'all let me know. Either way, I got Tootin on my rookie in my taxi. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to trade for this guy. He's going to go to a different team, or he's going to get traded, and he's going to be a star. He's going to be unstoppable. Breece Hall, come on down. You are one of my losers, and it's not your fault. It's not your fault. The Kansas City Chiefs could have gave up a third-round pick for you. They got a little cheap. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why. They had two guys hitting free agency in Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. I'd have gave up a third for you. They didn't want to give up a third. So you got franchise tagged by the Jets, right? You're going to make $14 million on the tag. You want a long-term deal. Of course, the Jets are dragging their feet. Why, I don't understand. They have no one else on the roster. The offense was horrible last year. You had no quarterback. You kind of still don't. I'm not a believer in is Geno Smith better than what you had last year in Justin Fields? Yes, honestly, yes. But you don't have anything else. It's you and Garrett Wilson and Mason Taylor. You need help at wide receiver. You need help at offensive line. You need help on the defense. You got a bunch of picks. The Jets did their due diligence and they traded and got a whole bunch of picks. So they're rebuilding. But now you're stuck on a team that's rebuilding. And you're 24 years old. You have talent and you're locked in with the Jets. It's like being chained to a sinking ship. Respectfully. Because I know you guys are talented and you guys put in the work. So I'm not saying that you're not talented, but your team overall respectfully sucks. Right? But Hall was still balling. 4.4 yards per attempt last season. He managed to rush for over 1,000 yards. He averaged 13 fantasy points per game, but he only got 4 touchdowns. He is a PPR. He's solid in PPR, right? He gets involved in the passing game. He can break away long runs. He can score almost anywhere on the field. We've seen it. But when your offense is ranked at the bottom of the league in points per game, it's kind of hard to do that and be relied on each and every week. I swore either the Chiefs or the Houston Texans were going to get Breece Hall. And it just wasn't in the cards. And to make it worse, right? You still have Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis on the roster. So not only do you have that, Aaron Glenn really believes that they can do some kind of committee approach. It's not going to work. And then why would you do a committee? Or why would you keep Breece Hall if you're going to do a committee? You're going to end up paying him big time money for him to share the ball when he's your best offensive weapon out of that backfield. And I like Braylon Allen. I'm not really too sold on Isaiah Davis yet, but because he's buried in the depth chart, you don't really get to see what he can do. But you're going to pay Breece Hall big time money to have him share or be in a rotation? That doesn't make any sense, but it's the Jets. So a lot of things don't make sense. I really wanted Breece Hall to get off the Jets and flourish literally anywhere else, but he got tagged. So his fantasy value, I would still draft him. If I can get him as he's fine. He's going to be fine as an RB2. Geno Smith is still better than Justin Fields. He's going to make the offense look a little bit better. Ashton Genty, when he was with the Raiders, he sucked with the Raiders, Geno Smith. But Ashton Genty was still a positive force for fantasy managers for, at least most of the season. And he was involved in the passing game too. So we can actually hope that Geno Smith can get Breece Hall the ball, kind of like he did with Genty. So there's something. But, if you paired him with a Mahomes or, CJ Stroud with an improved offensive line, you got something. But yeah, Breece Hall is definitely one of my losers, and it's unfortunate because it's not really his fault. He's a talented guy stuck on a team that may not have a real direction. Moving forward, I think everybody has this guy on their loser list for free agency. And I don't want to say anything harsh like he brought it on himself, but his play, his inconsistency, and then he was hurting other fantasy not prospects. He was hurting other fantasy skill positions because of his poor players, inconsistent play. And that's JJ McCarthy from the Minnesota Vikings. You weren't really drafted. Let's be honest. How many people were really drafting JJ McCarthy in 1 quarterback leagues? Were you starting him in 2 quarterback leagues? Because if you were, you got what you deserved. We keep it at a buck. You thought that you were going to get something in dynasty formats. If you have JJ McCarthy, you're not starting him. And if you were starting him, or if you had to start him, ouch, brother, ouch. He showed some flashes. He doesn't completely suck, but the inconsistency is what hurt him the most. And then getting injured on top of that in back-to-back seasons kind of cratered his fantasy value and his standing with the team because they went out and got Kyler Murray. If Kyler Murray can kind of get back to what he was doing before he got injured last season, vastly improved over J.J. McCarthy. That's going to be his job before week 1 starts. We're keeping it a buck. Because the Minnesota Vikings have already come out and said in so many words, they don't want to, abandon J.J. McCarthy, but they want to keep winning games. And they can't win games with J.J. McCarthy being an unfinished product. So they went out and got a veteran quarterback in Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray I'll put it like this. If you give Kyler Murray 4 weeks, right, and he balls or plays much better than J.J. McCarthy, J.J. McCarthy is going to be on the bench for the rest of the season unless Kyler Murray gets hurt. Actually, we might not even see J.J. McCarthy even if Kyler Murray gets hurt because Carson Wentz came back too. And Carson Wentz was better than J.J. McCarthy last season. So if Carson Wentz doesn't throw his shoulder out, he could have been the starting quarterback. Why not get Kyler Murray over there? But it's looking like a bad situation for J.J. McCarthy. He wasn't giving you anything for fantasy last year. He was hurting Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and T.J. Hawkinson too. Excuse me. He was hurting their fan. You picked Justin Jefferson as maybe your top 5. He was going top 5 in fantasy drafts. And he sucked because J.J. McCarthy couldn't consistently get him the ball. McCarthy averaged 12.5 fantasy points per game last season. You weren't putting that in your lineup. You weren't. 11 to 12 touchdown to interception ratio before he ended up getting hurt for the rest of the season. Barely cracked, 2,000? Under 2,000 yards passing. Kyler Murray with Justin Jefferson is more appealing. Kyler Murray with Jordan Addison is more appealing than having J.J. McCarthy out there. So, yeah, he's going to be on a lot of people's loser list this year. Another quarterback. Quarterbacks are catching a beating. Michael Penix. Had high hopes for him. Not going to sit up here and fraud. I'm not going to be that guy to just be like, I don't take no L's. Because that's corny. You're going to take L's if you are doing projections and making takes and all that stuff. You're going to take L's. And this is looking like it's going to be one of those L's because Michael Penix could be losing his job. The Atlanta Falcons picked up Tua Tagovailoa for the free ski. They're paying him $1.5 million? The rest of his contract is being paid by the Miami Dolphins. Tua, it's really his job to lose because Michael Penix, he's not recovered from that torn ACL from last season. So now Michael Penix is going to have to get healthy. He's going to have to get back into training camp, shake the rust off, and compete for his job against Tua Tagovailoa. And last year, Tua did suck. But we've seen Tua play at a much higher level than Michael Penix has shown so far, to the point that the Atlanta Falcons, under new management, felt more comfortable bringing in Tua Tagovailoa and questioning Michael Penix, even if he could be the starter this season. On top of the fact that, like I said, he's still coming back from a torn ACL, and he's not expected to be ready for the start of training camp. So you're already behind the 8 ball because Tua's going to be there for OTAs. He's going to be there for voluntary OTAs. He's going to be there for mandatory OTAs. He's going to be there for the start of training camp. And if Michael Penix can't get right until closer to the season, it's going to be Tua's job. That's going to be his job. So we're going to see Tua Tagovailoa starting for the Atlanta Falcons this season. So that puts Michael Penix on the 8 ball out. And there was a report recently that said that they're not trying to rush Michael Penix back. They want him to be 100% healthy and ready to go. But if you're not back by training camp and you're not back before the start of the season, you can kiss your job goodbye. 13.4 fantasy points he averaged last season. That was not, it was slightly better than what JJ McCarthy was putting up. But he wasn't consistent either. He had a few games that he had maybe 2 games where he scored over 20 fantasy points before getting injured. I believe he had 6 or 7 games under 15 fantasy points. That is not good, especially when you have guys like Drake London. You know, you're relying on Bijan Robinson, and Bijan Robinson was great. Don't get me wrong. But you want to get that PPR work magic going with Bijan Robinson. You know, your number 2, Darnell Mooney. I like Darnell Mooney, but you couldn't play him last year because the Atlanta Falcons offense was, or the passing game was inconsistent. You didn't know what you were getting week after week. And it hurt other players that you were targeting in fantasy drafts because you know Drake London. That's a name right there. You know Drake London. You saw Darnell Mooney ball out in 2024. He was great for like the first 7-8 games last season. He was off the waiver wire. But you couldn't rely on those guys week in and week out until at least Kirk Cousins came in and you knew where the ball was going. Kyle Pitts was balling out because I think Drake London got hurt towards the end of the season. But Michael Penix, big loser. And if Tua can ball out, he's going to keep that job. He's going to keep that job. Now, this next one, right? This is a complete mess. So it's not one individual player. It could be, but it's not. It's not one individual player. It is a whole unit. The Washington Commanders backfield is a freaking mess. So that's my entire losers. The whole backfield right now is nothing but losers, respectfully. And I'm not trying to, be smart, because you never know if this podcast works out. I could have one of them on the show. But for fantasy, it's losers. They went and picked up Rachaad White. They picked up Jerome Ford in free agency. They brought back Jeremy McNichols. So that's 3 running backs right there. You already had Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt from last season. He was a rookie. So you have 4 running backs. Who's going to be the starter? Is it going to be Ja'Cory? Is it going to be Rachaad White? Is it going to be Jerome Ford? We don't know. Respectfully, I don't think McNichols is going to be a starter. I'm not saying that. But we don't know. And the Commanders could still draft a running back in the draft, because in the 2026 NFL draft, because they have a top 10 pick. They pick 7th. So they can go and get a Jeremiah Love. They can get, or if he falls, because, Tennessee is being hyped to pick him up, which I hope they don't do. I hope they don't go that route. I would love for Jeremiah Love to get to the Commanders and they pick him, but it's gonna be a huge ask. I don't see who the Titans could pick up at 2 that would be more appealing than a running back. And I don't really feel like they need a running back, right? But the Commanders do, because they don't even know what they're doing at running back. Now, Ja'Cory wasn't bad last season, 4.5 yards per attempt. He scored 8 touchdowns, but the Commanders, I felt like they couldn't figure out whether to give him the job or keep doing, the rotation RBBC type thing, because there would be games where he would ball. Then they'd be like, oh no, we're gonna make it more of a rotation. And it was like, all right, well, the kid scored 2 touchdowns in a game. He's giving you the yards and you're not giving him the ball. I'm confused, because if he's playing well, you want to use him more. And it never felt like they got to a point where they were confident in playing JCM the entire way and, letting other backs kind of help and give him a breather. So it kind of hurt his fantasy points per game. He was only giving you 8.3. They weren't using him that much in the passing game, so his PPR appeal was not there. I don't know. And then like I said, he had big games, and it was like, yay. If you could flip him, that's what you should have did. I held on to him. In the leagues that I was able to grab him, I held on to him far too long, and it ended up costing me. I had to package him with a deal, in order to move him. I could have probably flipped him off of a good week. He had a good week against the Los Angeles Chargers in week 5. He scored 27 fantasy points. That would have been an opportune time to get rid of him because he really didn't give you much after that. But I don't know what the Commanders are doing. If the Commanders do pick up another running back in the draft, and hopefully it's Jeremiah Love, if he falls somehow to 7 and the Commanders take him, that's going to be your starting running back right there. I'm a firm believer in the fact that if you pick a running back inside the top 10, he's going to be your starter unequivocally. That means everybody else on that Commanders roster, they're camp bodies at best. It's going to be Jeremiah Love and anybody else, because I don't feel like they're confident enough in Jakrowski Merritt in order to give him the starting job. So we'll see what the Commanders do during the draft. If they pick up another running back, then that's the direction you kind of go in, especially if they move on one in the first round. But the guys that they have right now, they're not confidence builders for me. Rachaad White, Jerome Ford, we've seen them in spot starts at, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Cleveland Browns. Rachaad White he was okay, but Bucky Irvin took over there. Jerome Ford, he got on the tail end of Nick Chubb getting injured. He benefited from a lot of volume. They went and got Quinshon Judkins. Jerome Ford was never heard from again. So it's like, those guys, they're not A-listers, respectfully, in terms of fantasy value. They just don't give you enough, whereas you would want them on a roster. They're going to be on waivers. If an injury happens and they get more volume, they'll be more appealing. But outside of that, are you really drafting any of these guys, as nothing more than just a handcuff? If that's what you're into. Yeah. So, yeah, that whole backfield is a mess. I'm staying away from it. If they don't get, like I said, I'll say it again. They don't get Love, I'm staying away. They get Love, I'm going to be over there looking in the corner like, all right, Commanders, don't screw me over with this. This is an obvious play. Y'all ain't got Love with the 7th overall pick. He going to be the guy that's going to get a lot of the work, right? Because Jaden Daniels needs a running back there to help him stay alive. Because he got bent up like a chicken wing last year. And he hurt a lot of people. So I'm going to be over there looking at the Commanders offensive coordinator like, y'all went and got him. You're going to use him, right? You know what I'm saying? But, that right now, not a great look. Not a great look at all. I got 2 more losers for you. 2 more running backs. I didn't feel like a lot of wide receivers were in a loser position. I mean, I could have went Ricky Parasol, but has he done anything? He's been a fantasy loser since he's been drafted. Some of it is no fault of his own, and I didn't want to pick on him. But there weren't a lot of wide receivers that I felt like were losers in a sense. Like maybe I could have went Brian Thomas Jr., but the Jacksonville Jaguars didn't really make any moves in free agency to be like, yeah, it's even despite the trade rumors that have been surrounding him. So, they got Parker Washington, they got Jacoby Myers. They've been talking about wanting to get, BTJ more involved in the offense this year. So I can't really put him as a loser either. So I didn't feel like there were a lot of wide receivers that I could justify putting on the list. There's some of them may have an out. But the running back position, I don't know. There's a lot of dudes. There's a lot of teams, players that are in bad spots now. RJ Harvey. Yeah, he's on my loser list. They went back and got J.K. Dobbins. There's been I've been seeing some reports, some articles. Sean Payton might not be too confident in RJ Harvey to give him a, lion's share role. More of a change of pace guy. Big playability, though. I saw what he did to my Cowboys. But J.K. Dobbins was the guy who was getting most of the work. They brought him back in free agency. That puts J.K. Dobbins back in the driver's seat. R.J. Harvey, who many were hoping was going to elevate to that top tier back in the Denver Broncos backfield, doesn't look like it's happening. Now, it's one thing to note that Harvey did see an increase in carries after Week 10 when J.K. Dobbins went down, but he only averaged more than 4 yards a carry in just one game down the stretch. He did see significant passing work, so he is still appealing for PPR formats, and of course, the opportunity increases if J.K. Dobbins gets hurt. He had 4 targets per game from weeks 10 to 17. He had 28 total targets down that stretch, so that's pretty decent work to see 4 to 5 targets a game as a running back. So, like I said, the PPR appeal is still there, but his upside is going to be limited because J.K. Dobbins is back there and he can catch passes too. So the hope was for Harvey to, kind of elevate and get more work. In his second year, he's going to get more confidence. He's going to get more trust from the offense, from the offensive coordinators, from Sean Payton, and it's not in the cards for him right now. Maybe that changes, and Harvey is a player who, shows out really well in training camp, proves that he can handle the workload. He's more effective in the rushing game, even though he's going to be paired with J.K. Dobbins, and he looks much better than he did in his rookie season. But till then, he's a loser for fantasy. And then my last one, Woody Marks, man. Woody Marks from the Houston Texans. Whatever fantasy light that he had as a potential starter, RB1, Kaputski. David Montgomery got traded from the Lions to the Texans, and that's literally all she wrote. Dunzo. Fantasy value in the toilet. Nick Chubb was the running back 1 last season. Didn't really work out. He looked good in some games, but the Texans' rushing attack was not great overall. They averaged 3.9 yards per attempt as a unit. Not great. Not great at all. But David Montgomery, with the additions to the offensive line, they've been aggressive trying to fix that offensive line in free agency. They grabbed up 3 offensive linemen. Wyatt Teller from the Browns was one of them. Braden Smith from the Colts was one of them. They grabbed another guy from Arizona. They're actively trying to fix that offensive line and help improve that run game. And David Montgomery is a guy that I really like to have a resurgent year, because he suffered from just lack of opportunity, because Jahmyr Gibbs was just going the freak off every week, except in the fantasy playoffs, because he had 2 bad games sandwiched between a really good game, and he cost me a fantasy championship. But I'm not going to listen. I still like Jahmyr Gibbs, but now you have another running back in David Montgomery who's in a new spot, who's being brought in to be a running back 1. So if that's the case, Woody Marks gets relegated to, change of pace RB2 role. So I don't think there's going to be any real fantasy value for him unless an injury happens. Marks averaged 3.6 yards per attempt, just over 700 yards rushing. If you were a dynasty guy and you went and picked up Woody Marks during the season, I think you could put him back. I feel like he's not going to have a substantial role with what the Houston Texans invested in trading for David Montgomery. And David Montgomery's no real slouch in the passing game either. He's not a juggernaut when it comes to running routes out there, out of the backfield, but he can definitely catch, some swing passes into the flat. So, yeah, Woody Marks, Dunzo too. But that is it for my losers of free agency for fantasy football in 2026. Let me know what you think. Is there another player that you think should have been on this list? Let me know. Comment in the comment section wherever you're watching or listening to the podcast. We appreciate all the engagement that we do get, and we always want more. So don't be afraid to let us know what you think of the episode, and drop us a line, man. Let us know what you think about if there's any other players that should have been on this list for this episode. But as always, make sure that you're following the Fantasy's Finest podcast on our YouTube channel. Wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on Apple and Spotify and all that good stuff. So if whatever your flavor is, hit that subscribe button and lock in with us. We got more content coming, got more articles coming. We're going to stick to the schedule this year. I'm always going to say that each episode. And I'm trying some new things now. I just added a Substack for the Fantasy's Finest, so we're going to be posting some of our articles too on a Substack, so you can check us out. And I'm going to put some more. I'm trying to figure out how to make it a little bit different so that it's more appealing for subscribers to go over there and check it out, because we do have the fantasysfinest.com where we drop our articles too. But I just want to add a nice little wrinkle to give people, any readers, subscribers and things like that, a reason really to get into our Substack. So we just got it going, but we'll see how it goes. I like the writing aspect for fantasy football too, so I can't let that go. I really can't. I love fantasy football content. Is just so fun to do. So I wish somebody hiring out there, you know what I'm saying, hook a brother up, try and get in. But that'll do it for the show, man. Had a great time. We will catch you on the next episode. We're gonna get to this draft content and let you know what players I got my eye on for our rookie watch episode, and that's gonna be coming up next. But as always, y'all be safe, enjoy this content, and I will see you in the next episode. Take it easy, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy's Finest podcast. Be sure to join the community on Facebook and follow us on Twitter too at the Fantasy's Finest. See you next episode.